Joining me today, the man who had the original vision for Sunfest, who's built out one of the most beautiful and spectacular in terms of overall vision amphitheater sites in Western Canada at LakeTown Ranch. Greg Adams, pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Good to be here, Jim.
So you're a former NHLer, very successful business guy. What was it that drew you into the music business? The music business is well known for being very turbulent, and yet you couldn't resist the temptation. Tell us how you ended up getting into it.
I guess we talked about this, and when you play sports, you play hockey, you're actually an entertainer. The only difference between a Broadway play and a hockey game is at the end, you usually know when the fat lady's going to sing. But in hockey, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. So entertainment, we overlap. It's the same kind of business. Every entertainer I ever met wanted to be an athlete. Every athlete I ever met wanted to be an entertainer or wanted to be a rock star. So we were fortunate to meet a few of the bands over the years because you share the same facility. I was always intrigued at how it was put together, the whole process, met a few promoters over the years. So just overall interest in music and just love of music. And like you, Jim, you go to work out, but if you're listening to the right music, you always work out a little harder. It motivates you. So I rode a bike for 15 years pretty extensively, and I had music in my ears from Mellencamp to Prince to the Rolling Stones, you name it. Bit of a classic rock guy, but Chili Peppers nowadays, and an awful lot of Eric Church and bands like that. So just music's always moved me. My kids love it. They're older now, so we just kind of gravitated towards it. Is how it started, just a love of music.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's as good a reason as any. Music is one of those things that changes your state without actually being a drug, right? Like it gives you the ability to jack yourself up or embrace some type of emotion that maybe is connected to a memory in that song, and it's one of the beautiful things about it. And it's addictive, but not necessarily in a way that's pernicious.
No, absolutely. So then the beginning of my involvement with it is. Lived in Washington, D.C. for years. That's where our first son was born. So at the end of hockey season, we would go to Florida. So as we got a little older, I retired from hockey. This was, I'm going to say around 1998. We went back to Florida for a family holiday. We had 3 kids by then. And you're always looking for things to do instead of just going to Disney World every day. So I saw that there was a rib and wine fest in the park. And a band that my generation would know, Three Dog Night, who had huge hits, late 60s, 70s. They must have a dozen anthems. And they were playing...
Joy to the World. Joy to the World. That's a big one.
There's so many of them. So we went to this park, and there was 4,000 people. Nice little pop-up stage, probably a stage line 100. And the band played, and I'm sitting there, and I'm drinking a beer, and Jude's got a wine, and the kids got ribs. And we're listening to all this music and the atmosphere. And I turned to Judy and go, why don't we have this at home? And I came back home, and I've always been one that's not afraid to try things. And I actually phoned Brian Burke, and I said, because he's a good friend, and he's well-known in hockey and well-known in entertainment. I said, who do we know? And he says, he gave me Brian Adams' manager's name, and I phoned Brian Adams' manager, and he was polite and chatted with me for an hour and said, here's kind of, you're crazy to do it, but if you want to do it, fill your boots on. It gave me some ideas. And through Feldman, I signed 5440, and we threw, a small concert at a facility here that's Providence Farm, beautiful little area, and we had 1,000 people, and it was one night. And my budget the first year, it was 5440, and my budget was $54,000. So that was our first
staging, production, band, the whole bit.
$4,000.
Oh, love it.
I lost a couple of grand, lost a few more than that, but had a hell of a party. Everyone had fun, and just one thing kind of led to another. And I just, over the years, 2 years later, the Rolling Stones played for SARS in Toronto, and Blue Rodeo played with them on a Friday night, and on a Saturday night they played for me at that same facility, and I had 3,500 people. And we overflowed the place, and it was an incredible night. And that was my first time that I was politely kicked off a site. They said, you know, we love it, it's wonderful, but you're too big. So I moved to a second site. Same thing happened again about 3 or 4 years later. Moved to a third site, which was our Cowichan exhibition grounds. And Keith Urban and Tim McGraw did me in there because we outgrew that site. And as that was happening, I started looking for land, and that's how LakeTown Ranch evolved. And also just traveling the world and traveling all North America, looking at different facilities and just imagining what we could have. And I bought the land out at Lake Cowichan and developed LakeTown Ranch 5.5 years ago. We bought the land and started developing it in January, and Carrie Underwood played our stage on August 1st. So in 8 months, our family and a few close friends built a hell of a facility.
That is a great origin story. And like a musician or an artist, you followed your heart into the business.
Well,
but at some point,
big passion. And I think
right.
To do anything like this, I think every promoter, Jim, people like yourself, we have a passion for it. And we're fortunate that our passion is also what we make a living at. Right.
But the reality is, even if you follow your heart into something, at some point you've got to integrate your head. You've got to start paying attention to metrics and really running a tight ship in terms of financials, because the big illusion is, for a lot of outsiders, and you started as an outsider, is that there's millions of dollars in this business and you're going to make it big the first time you do a show. Your 5440 experience, you lost a few $1,000s with your very first event, but you could probably see that if you did things a bit differently, there was a light at the end of the tunnel. There was some real potential here for you to actually do something that could be macro. But a lot of people are drawn to this business, like I said, because they think they're going to make a bunch of money. That's an illusion.
It is an illusion, but you know, I've been fortunate. I grew up in my dad worked at a pulp mill, but always wanted to have a business. So when I was 10 years old, he bought a small sports shop, a mom and pop. You know, mom worked there, dad worked there. I worked there at 10 years old. I mean, at 10 years old, I'm learning to sharpen skates. But when you're with the family and you're sitting around the dinner table, you understand. I remember once we had like a $240 day, and I went, $240. Boy, are we rich, because this was 1970. And then my dad says, yeah, but remember, we have to pay for the product. I went, oh, how much was that? And he goes like, you know, $120. Okay, well, that's still a great day. We made $100. And then well, what about the rent? What about, and after he went through it all, I went, holy Christ, Dad, we're broke. And so I was very fortunate, 10, 11, 12 years old, and always interested in it. You know, I had brothers and sisters that grew up at the same time, but didn't have the same interest. I'm just fortunate that I took an interest in it. So at a very young age, and even all through my 10 years of hockey, I understood that, you know, all these things are a business. And the one thing that, one of the best compliments I ever got was from someone in the industry that said to me, you know what, Greg, you're one of the few people that understands that you're running a business and you make it look like a party. And that's what our festivals are. They're a party, they're a great time, but I'm really running a business. And I think that the people that have a hard time understanding this or a hard time surviving in this industry think that they can throw a party and all the finances will work out. And it doesn't. You can get carried away spending too much. You think, well, I'll just, you know, fireworks, I'll do this, I'll do that. And yeah, it's great to do. But at the end, if you bring in $1 million and you spend $1.2 million, you're not going to be around a long time. And
that's right.
The numbers now are just getting bigger and bigger by the year.
And you found a great way to balance the consumer experience and the experience of the people who buy tickets for your festival, because you built a great brand around the fact that when people show up, they know they're going to get their money's worth and more. What are some of the competitive advantages that you believe your festival has, or your festival properties have, I should say, because there's multiple now, over some of the other festivals out there? Like, what do you guys do to go that extra mile for the consumer to make sure that they walk away going, I'm going to buy a ticket to this next year?
It's taking time and it's evolving every year, but it's the customer experience. And no matter how good the show is, no matter how good your experience is, I went to a Seattle Mariners, and no disrespect to Seattle, but I went to a Seattle Mariners game playing against the Blue Jays. So every Canadian tried to go to that game. And I went up in the third inning to get a beer, and I came back in the fifth inning with my beer in my hand. So it was 2 innings I had to wait. And I went back up again one more time, and they ran out of beer. So no matter how good that game is, but I came all the way from Vancouver Island. I paid for a hotel, the expense, the tickets, everything. You add it all up, you expect to at least have the creature comforts of going to the washroom, and it's a 5-minute lineup. You don't expect to just walk right in, but it's a 5-minute lineup. So we have really geared ourselves to, when people arrive, we try to give them as much information before they arrive, that their camping experience, is seamless, that within an hour their campsite's, set up, and that their ticketing and that their entrance, and they understand things. And then we just try to make sure that you don't wait 10 minutes for anything.
And because it's your site and you're the visionary, you have the ability to make those changes carte blanche, which puts you in a different position than a lot of people who are running amphitheaters on leased land and they're working for other people. You're able to go, you know what? I want to add 20 more washrooms just because I found the lineups were a bit long this year. That puts you in a good spot.
Yeah, I think when you own your own facility, you are able to adapt to it. And Jim, you'll say, like, a lot of people think we're so fortunate we get to put on these events and be part of the party. Half the time I'm walking around worried that the lineups are too long, and I'm always watching. But the toughest part of what we do when you do the festival business is you get to observe 1, 2, or 3 weekends, and each one of them is different. Our Snoop show was, we just couldn't anticipate it. We sold 100% more tickets for the one day than we expected, and so we're trying to adapt to it. But you follow these things, you do them once a year, then you get to sit there for 11 months, make notes, and go, okay, next time I'm going to do it better. Whereas in other businesses, if something doesn't work out in 1 week, you can kind of talk to your staff, talk to people, and the next week you can try and make adjustments, or once a month. So the difference on this one is if you get something wrong, you got to call an audible like they do in football. You improvise as quick as you can, make it as good as you can. Go to social media, own it. Don't make excuses, explain what happened, tell them you're going to do better, and the next year you better do better, or the next event. And that's what we've done. And we have learned, and during COVID, we've spent a few $100,000 up there, and we've made all kinds of improvements again, because we know we're in this for the long haul. My kids love this event, and they're in their 20s and 30s, and they're going to take it after I do.
So we were talking a little bit about the benefit of you having the autonomy and make those changes on the fly as quickly as you need to in order to improve the consumer experience. One thing I do want to talk to you about is your talent selection proclivities. So how do you go through your process of who you're going to put on your lineup year after year? How are you measuring metrics to make sure you're putting together a lineup that's going to be compelling for your customers?
I think when I originally started, I made all the rookie mistakes, and luckily I was fortunate. It started in classic rock, and it also started 20 years ago. So we had more options for kind of rock, classic rock. It was more Canadiana. So starting out, I was picking bands that I liked, because it was a one-day show. But then as it grew, and I hope I say this really respectfully, I'm now a country fan, but I grew up kind of with the Beatles and the Stones. So I lean towards rock, and I think all of a sudden there's this opportunity to bring in a Johnny Reed and do a country thing, and I'm going, and then I realized right away, I'm in the entertainment business. I'm not in the what Greg likes business. I'm in the entertainment business. So what does my customer want? So that's when we brought in country. That was the big eye opener. It's like, wait a sec. We had great success. It went really well. And around that time, I started meeting. Up until then, I'm just a Feldman guy. I'm looking what they got in their roster. I pick a few people. I start meeting some Jim Cressmans, some Jack Rosses, Nick Minamas, Nicole Moore from the States has probably been the biggest game changer for me in the country. She's been my right hand, like a little sister I never had, and she's been absolutely incredible. She's very involved in country music, was with Gil Cunningham for years. and I stayed with Nicole. She's on her own now. So a lot of information from her, cross-referencing to the Jim Cressmans, to everyone I talk to. It's like, and then my own kids, and I have a small core group of people that I know. And then you're also cross-referencing a lot to other people in the industry that I've got to know. You know, guys that, I just talked to Kenny Hess this morning. He owns Rock and River. Kenny, how's this working out? You know, there's different people available to me. But the biggest thing I ask for is I'm always looking for, and I remember this years ago, I was in Portland, Maine playing hockey in 1980, and I heard about this band that played for 11 people and played for 2 hours, and afterwards the write-up in this newspaper was this trio was incredible. It was the Police, and they played, you know, it was like 1979, and then 2 years later I'm watching them in Maine for 4,500 people, and 5 years later, you know, you're watching them, you know, you name it, you know, selling out stadiums. And I'm always looking for that experience. Everyone always talks about, yeah, I went to see, you know, a certain band and Led Zeppelin opened. You know, I love those experiences. And that's what we provide at a festival. You've got to trust us that we're spending all year long looking for a Thomas Rhett who played for me twice. And by the second time he played for me, people started to know who he was. But the first time he played for me, he was a $20,000 artist that was breaking out, and he's the nicest guy, the nicest band. They're half Canadian, half Americans in his band. They're absolutely wonderful to deal with. And, you know, you consider them friends in the entertainment industry now, but we brought them to Vancouver Island before anyone had seen them. And so you're always looking for the Snoop Dogg, you know, you're always looking for the Eric Church, that people know who they are, but we're always exposing our guests to an entertainment experience they're not going to get anywhere else, because you're getting a smorgasbord of entertainment. You're getting 30, 40 artists over a weekend, and some of them, a lot of times people go away and go, that artist on Thursday night was incredible, and they didn't even know who that artist was. So that's part of what we enjoy doing. You're exposing you know, people to an overall entertainment package that they came for one artist and they go away enjoying the whole package.
And you're coordinating your talent buys in many cases with other festivals that are happening either in the Pacific Northwest around the same weekend, and or what Kenny Hess is doing up in Merritt, BC with his festival. And I've explained this to a lot of people from outside the industry that if you want to get those big headliners in to headline, say, your Friday or Saturday night, you almost need to string together a full weekend for them, because the reality is, if you're Eric Church, you can play a 3-day weekend quite easily within 1,000 miles of wherever you're stationed. In most cases, that's Nashville. You know, there's lots of demand for these guys. So it's not always compelling enough to do a one-off offer for a headliner of that magnitude. You have to work with other festivals in order to make a compelling enough case to get those headliners to come up, especially at that level.
Absolutely. And we don't have a formal buying group, but it's a pretty solid group. And that started with Nicole years ago. We were tied into a show in Oregon, Watershed, which is a Live Nation. And, you know, they are the big dog, but the artists aren't just going to play Watershed and go, okay, now I'll do nothing else for the weekend. There was also a Big Valley, which is now under new ownership, a Big Valley we bought with. Kenny was is in Merritt, but previously he was in Mission. So, you know, originally he was in Mission, and I'm here, you know, on the island. It's a little bit of, you know, who's the big dog, and, you know, and then it's like, wake up, like, we work together and bring in artists. And you know what, he's I mean, I just talked to him an hour ago. He's a very close personal friend, love the guy, and you know, I like what he's doing, and we're on the same page. He's got a little different flavor to his, I got a little different to mine, but you know, BC is fortunate that they got both of us for that August weekend, because we got two great shows. But really, I mean, sometimes you can look at a lineup, but we're almost 75% the same, but we're, you know, 500 kilometers apart. He's got a different market, I've got a different market. So yeah, we bought a lot together. Big Valley we coordinate with, a little bit also still with Live Nation out at Watershed, but they tend to be later to the party. But Jim, when I deal with you, you know, how many times have we said, you know, is so-and-so available? Well, hey, I'll take him Friday, then Kenny can get him, then he can make his date. in Edmonton. So we're trying to help the artists have the best weekend they can, and also to be as profitable as they can for that weekend, because it's a hard way to make a living, very hard way to make a living.
Definitely, and that's laudable of you to see the wisdom in transitioning your competitors into collaborators, right? Like, a lot of people don't get that. This business is full of entrepreneurial people who have very independent mindsets. They like the idea of proprietary lineups. I get it. But the reality is, you are just looking to, set your ego aside and build whatever festival lineup you can that's best for your customers and that works for the headliners of that magnitude and that size.
Yeah, I think that the volatility of our business. I mean, we're outdoors, so number one, weather. What's the weather going to do? And there's just so many things that happen. So it's weather. And inclement weather that we're not getting, and then there's the perceived notion that something didn't work. Oh, it was a mud bowl somewhere else. Well, that's not what our festival's like, but people will think, or if there's a bunch of garbage at one site, they start painting you with the same brush. So it's difficult because you're outside. There's so many variables, especially now that we have our own stage and we built our facility. But before, I had generators go down. There's entertainers about to go out, and a generator goes down. Next thing you know, you're running around and plugging this and plugging that. And of course, the show goes on, but that's what can happen outdoors. So it's a very volatile business for sure. The worst thing you want to do is make it more difficult to get your artists and to start, having a tit for tat with another promoter that's, in the next region over. Work together and you're going to have more success.
Well, good on you for seeing the light on that. A lot of people don't in this business. So it speaks to your overall mandate of creating a win-win scenario for your customers, the artists, and obviously yourself. A big cross-section of my audience are independent artists who are getting into the game. How does someone who might be just getting their first single on radio, they might be in that 100,000 stream category for a song, but they're not yet at headliner status, how do they make a case to get on your lineup? Say they're not represented by a guy like myself or Nick Minema or Juliet McCann. They are just looking, they've got a dream to play Sunfest. They want to be on that main stage or your secondary stage. How do they go about the process of making a case to get on one of those stages?
I think that we've had many artists that we've given the opportunity to, and then usually pretty quickly, they do have representation. They do have a Jim Cressman in their life, or a Nick or someone. I think that a big part of it is, and it's a social media world, is to get, in front of every festival has, a link where an artist can get on the small stage. So the biggest thing is ego aside. You may be, the big dog in the little town, and there's, hundreds or thousands, 1,000 people that come watch you play. But on a bigger stage, you got to realize you got to work your way up to it. You start in the fourth line to get to the first line usually. So, one, get the information out to and push yourself to the promoters, to the owners of these festivals, but do it in a respectful and polite way. I've had some guys come like, if you don't have me on your festival, I don't know if you're going to have any success. I'm like, all right, thanks for helping me out. I got here at church this year, but, I guess I won't be there without you. So be respectful. But the biggest thing is once they start having success and I've really seen this, it's absolutely mirrored between professional sports and entertainment. The people that work the hardest, the people with the best attitudes, the respectful people that their team comes in, not just them, their whole team comes in, and they represent themselves as pros. They stay in this game for 20, 30, 40 years. You know what? 30 years later, you might not be making $200,000 a show or $500,000 a show, but there's a lot of people out there that were going out and they're still making 40 and 50 a show, and they're playing 50 and 100 times a year, and it's a pretty good income. So I really see that, the ones that work the hard with the best attitude are the same way you get in front of the promoter to begin with, and it's the same way you stay in front of the audience for 20 and 30 years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's if you've got the talent and the ability, it just boils down to a war of attrition. How long can you hang in there? How long can you continue to max out on your efforts and continue to work hard, build an audience, build a loyal audience? But back to your process. Do you actually have an application process on your website? Not that I want to give your cell phone out, or anything like that, but if someone's looking to reach out, touch base with you guys, do you have those? Do you have that ability in place?
On LakeTown Ranch and also LakeTown Shakedown or Sunfest, there is a link, and you can go to it, and it's vendor application, artist applications. We tend to do it very early. So like right now, we'd be doing an intake until about January 15th, and we always extend it a bit for the right situation. And then we vet. We usually get between 50 and 100 applicants per show, and we try to get 10 to 15 of them on a show. We vet them through. We'll watch their YouTube videos. We'll contact them. We'll go through. We have a bit of a process in-house. My family's involved, my sons, as well as Mike Han, who runs our festivals for us now. He was involved with Tall Tree for years, had a lot of success with that as well. And so we go through it, and he is an artist, which really helps, so he has an ear for it. We have a like for it, but he has more of an ear for it, which is really nice. So there is a process, and every one of our shows, I think most shows do have that. Maybe not, you get to a watershed experience, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure every big valley and every rock and river, Kenny Hess, he's a blue collar player, had great success, in his time, and loves to try and give opportunities to people. And I'm the same. I'm a fourth liner. I'm always voting for the little guy to move up. So
yeah, you seem to be very receptive to offering newer artists the opportunity to get on your stage to make a name for themselves.
Well, you think of, like, Jim, how do all of us get there? If you're a carpenter, how did you get there? When you were an apprentice, or even before you're an apprentice, someone gives you an opportunity and you like it. It's your uncle, it's a neighbor, it's your hockey coach, and next thing you've got a construction company. So you know what I mean? Every one of us has had a hand up. And in this industry, especially in Canada, and I hope people understand that, in Canada, we got 37 million people. And if you can make it south of that 49th parallel, there's 350 million people. So if you're making a living up here, it's tougher to make a living in the music business in Canada for an awful lot of artists. Yes, there's a Justin Bieber, yes, there's, Mendes, there's people you can say, look how big they are. But there's a whole bunch of bands grinding it out to make a living, and it's tougher if you don't make it on that world stage.
What's your favorite part about it? Is it watching the artist develop over time on your stage, coming back potentially year after year and growing their audience and their following? Or is it actually planning out and marketing the event? Or is it building out the site, which you've done? The access points on your site are amazing. It's so easy to navigate and get around. What is your favorite component of what you do?
I guess the favorite component is when the night comes together. It's usually 7:30, 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I walk around, or I go to elevated areas where I can watch what is happening, and seeing it within reason, the movement, it's kind of seamless. People, you see the lineups aren't too big. People are smiling faces. No one, everyone's got that festival vibe, which is all about the guy you bump into is not like, it's not an aggressive thing. It should be, hey, sorry, bud, how you doing? Like when that vibe's out there where everyone's just having a good time and there for the right reason, and then the band comes on, because that anticipation, waiting for the artist to come out, and you can almost feel it in the air. And when they come out, so I just think to me, I love building it, I love planning it, love being involved with guys in the industry and ladies where you're coming together with artists. But really what it comes down to is when that comes together for that half hour just before your big headliner's on, the big headliner hits, and that first 15 to 20 minutes, just seeing it come together, to me, it makes it all worthwhile. Then you go right back to, you click into, what's wrong? Is everything okay? What do I got to do now? Are they going to egress okay? It never ends. It's, it's just like, it's almost like it'd be like grandparents taking a bunch of grandchildren out in the boat. You love it, but you're always worried they're going to fall in. That's just,
for sure.
It's like, is everyone okay? Is everyone okay? It's just, even though you're enjoying the day, you're always worried something can go wrong.
I think that's part and parcel to being a perfectionist, right?
Well,
That's
I'm
just where
definitely
you
a
live.
perfectionist, but our care factor, our want to do the right thing with our whole family is way up there. We really do. I said forever, and I still say it. I want to run not the biggest. I want to run the best, most organized, safest event in Canada. That's where we're setting the bar.
Right. Well, so far so good on that front, my friend. And you've built out other properties as well, the LakeTown Shakedown. So tell me about the difference between the audiences. Do you see a lot of crossover these days with your country audience coming up for Sunfest, and then a lot of those same people coming back for LakeTown Shakedown, which is a bit more multi-genre? Or in the last few years, you've had Snoop Dogg as one of your headliners. You mentioned that. Snoop Dogg, by the way, is now a boxing commentator, in case you watched the Mike Tyson-Roy Jones Jr. fight. Man, he was hilarious.
Kid does it all, doesn't he?
Yeah, totally. But do you notice a big, is it a totally different audience, or do you see a lot of crossover?
The weekend audience is a different audience. We did a classic rock show, and I loved it, but it's just really difficult to do. Really hard to do unless you get the big names. Unless you got the Police, the Stones, and someone else. Of course, it'll work. But if it's just the midline, lower end, or midline classic rock, it just doesn't work. So that classic rock and country was a good overmix. But like I say, it just wasn't working financially. When we went to the Shakedown, which is more and multi-genre is the only way I can say it, because it's a little bit of hip hop, some rap, some newer music. I don't know what you want to call it, but that crowd is a different crowd, and it totally is a different crowd. Like, I mean, I get Honda Civics, with 4 kids in it, and they step out, and they're all dressed in Halloween costumes. And I'm not joking, but they're dressed to the nines. They're there to have fun. And then in comes the next event. In comes, a jacked up 4x4 Dodge pickup truck, with a Canadian flag in the back. And the kid, he's got the tattoo across here, and they're having fun. So it's just like 2 different kind of groups, very different kind of vibe. I will never be disrespectful to any of my customers, but the hip hop, the fun group, the respect, how they intermingle is just amazing. They left our site, and I walked around the next morning. I went, was anyone here? Like, it was spotless.
No garbage.
Absolutely spotless. And the whole vibe was just that, that hunk kind of, I don't know, I can't describe it. It's just a really cool vibe. They're definitely a different group. I mean, they're 20 to 40 somethings, and I'm 60 now. And I get it, because my dad didn't understand the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, couldn't get the long hair. So I'm sure I'm not going to quite understand what the 30-year-olds enjoy. But how they intermingled with each other and how they had such a great time was wonderful to see. Like I say, the Sunfest crowd, more of a mixed bag, a little bit more testosterone at times, definitely, but they're learning too that, really, this is all about a good time, and leave the aggression somewhere else. So, it really is starting to come together for both events, but they're definitely different.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the Sunfest event a couple of times, and I can testify to that. It's just a great vibe. Everybody's having fun. Not a lot of troublemakers on site. A really congregational and communal aspect to what you're doing out there. And I think that's something that obviously people are missing, as live music has gone by the wayside with what's happened with COVID. How confident are you that you guys are going to be able to pull off events in 2021 as things sit right now?
It's, the goalposts seem to come closer and move further away by the day, by the week. I was 75, 80% confident a few months ago. I'm probably 95, 99% confident now. And why I say that is, and Jim, you know me, I like my math. I mean, we're into this. We're about 250 days into COVID. It hit us last March. We'll do the months, and it's now December. Our shows aren't happening for another 250 days. And we have a vaccine, multiple vaccines. I think the worst we're going to have it, I personally think, is, November, December, January, and I think it's going to turn the corner. They saw that lady in the UK got the first vaccine. Well, it's going to explode now. They're going to go from thousands a day to hundreds of thousands to millions of people around the world will get the vaccine, in the months coming. So with that, one of the things we did do, and this is Live Nation, are my partners, joint venture partners in the shakedown, which has been wonderful because, I'm definitely the mouse hanging on to the elephant on this case, but they really respect what we do and the family atmosphere and the customer comforts we do so well here. They just go, you do that, and they help me with the bands, and so the Wu-Tangs and the Snoops and people like that, they land in our lap pretty easy, which is nice. And we have taken our July 1st show, which is just how it started. We picked a weekend a few years ago and did it the July 1st, which is not always on a weekend. And we moved it this year. No one knows this yet, but we know it. And we're moving it back to the September long weekend. We're going to leave it there. So that consequently is another 60 days later. So
Right.
my first show of any size is the August 1st weekend, which is still, 7.5 full months away, 225 days away. So I feel very confident that the worst case scenario, if something went sideways because artists couldn't get in, we will have a show. It'll be more Canadian.
Right. Which speaks well for the Canadian industry if that happens. And, it could be a win-win either way. Yeah, I think you're right. I think with the distribution of vaccine, the inevitable herd immunity, which is happening, as more people contract and hopefully recover quickly from the disease. I think you're right. I think you've got a really good chance at getting things out of the gate for next summer. Now, you mentioned early in the conversation about moving this event because you outgrew certain sites that you were on. How receptive have the cities and municipalities been to allowing you to host this event? Because, the reality is you're a massive economic driver, economic impact boon for the area, but there's also more traffic, more people, and that doesn't always rub all the residents in the area right.
I think at all locations, the first move was more or less the people that owned Providence Farm, which is it's a farm. It is a working farm. It's a collective. Absolutely wonderful things they do for special needs and in our community. So that one was very respectful. And I looked at it and 3,000 people. I went, this isn't going to work. And they were really nice. It was like, thanks, Greg. But, the second one was a couple of neighbors. But when we went to the Cowichan exhibition, it's really designed to put on big events. But the proximity to the Island Highway, the main road up and down Vancouver Island, we're right on it. So we had a backup of 2 kilometers long for vehicles to come in. So that one there, same thing. But when we went to Lake Cowichan, we went through the whole process. We are zoned for entertainment. We are zoned for 15 nights, unlimited on the main stage. So we can hold 20,000 people in that facility on the main stage 15 times a year, which may not seem like a lot, but if you look through the amphitheaters and you take out the LA Bowl and you take out Red Rocks and take out a few of the big ones, really they only run 10 to 15 times a year. So when we did go, I want to be respectful, but I think what it really comes down to is change scares a lot of people. And it definitely scares, in your neighborhood when a subdivision is going to change or they're going to add certain businesses to an area. You see it. There's a concern about change, and you have to, come in and explain and show your engineers, your sound engineers, and biologists reports and everything we put in. Try and satisfy people so they can understand what's going to happen. What really happened there is we had a very small contingent that wasn't happy, and then we haven't heard from them for the last few years. So obviously it worked out all right, but you're always a little bit of walking a tightrope. You got to be respectful for your neighbors because you are changing their world, but you're also changing it in good ways. The community we've gone to, and and I, once again, I keep saying the disrespectful, but I grew up here. I love Lake Cowichan. I went to Lake Cowichan Hockey School with Orland Kurtenbach, who's a personal friend now and part of my alumni on the Canucks. And now, he had a hockey school out there in 1970. I love that little town. Went down to the duck pond swimming and skating and great summers. And that brought a lot of people in and brought a lot to that community. If you look at that town now, 10, 20 years ago, 20, 30-year-olds didn't want to live in that town. And now they live in a town that Eric Church and Carrie Underwood and Thomas Rhett and everyone's come out and played at. Snoop Dogg's played there. It just kind of created, hey, this is a cool little town. A lot of stuff happening here. And more businesses have evolved and starting to regenerate. So it's been healthy. Now, if you lived there and you wanted it totally quiet and didn't want any of this, you're on your retirement check and everything's beautiful, maybe you're not happy with that. But most people look at it and go, it's an opportunity for their kids, and their grandkids, and it has helped overall. And one of the things I like about it is yes, there's sound, but it's relatively a clean environment that brings a lot of people in. It's tourism at its best. It really is. So, overall, you're always stick handling a little bit, trying to keep, and we're totally attuned to it. If we have a concern with a neighbor, I see the neighbor. If I don't see the neighbor, I phone someone that I know very well. He talks to the neighbor. I go, we have a coffee. How can I make this right? And I've done that 20 times here in the last 5 years, and everyone appreciates that, that I'm available and that I'll go see them.
Right, and you're willing to confront whatever concerns they have and hopefully alleviate them, and remind people that really this is only a couple weekends a year during the summer. It's not like you're doing this 200 nights a year. Now, do you have plans, assuming everything comes off well in 2021, to expand, maybe add more festival properties on site, do more one-off concert events? What's your overall vision for this in the future?
What I'm missing right now, and I think what I've been pushing towards, and I've talked to you, Jim, many times, talked to the guys at Live Nation, we're missing the one-off concert. And last year, we had a date held for us, and I talked to you about it because they were also looking at Alaska. I had a date held for the Foo Fighters. So I'm not going to invent, but maybe I am inventing because it's a unique experience we have here. We're going to create not a festival, but it'll be a camping concert event. So you can come to one of our events. It's one night. It's the Foo Fighters. We'll have a few bands on before, but unlike going to an arena, parking your car and driving away, you can come to us, park, enjoy the event, and go home. You can use our shuttles, or you can come and camp for the night. Come in early. You can partake in a few drinks. You're safe. You can go back, relax at the campsite, and go home the next day. So that's the one that I think is missing. It's the one-off. It's love to have the Foo Fighters, but I can go on, and the Bruno Marses and the people that can play. They have nowhere else to play in Vancouver Island because those bands have to play for 20,000 people. The economics does not work going to a 5,000 seat arena and trying to charge $350 a ticket.
Yeah, the math just doesn't make any sense. So you're absolutely right. The only challenge you guys have is it's somewhat seasonal. You're looking to do those shows in the months where you could host an event of that size and not deal with the implications of bad weather.
No, exactly. So that's the thing is, I think the island, and I know this, we're starved for the entertainment because we don't get the Foo Fighters. So if the Foo Fighters were play at our site on a Wednesday night, it would be sold out, and everyone would go to work late the next day or not go to work Thursday, and they'd be there because we save $600-700 minimum going to LakeTown to a show as opposed to going to Vancouver for a show, because you've got to go across the ferries both ways. You've got to lose a day and a half worth of work. You could be anywhere in Vancouver Island, leave at 4 o'clock from work, and see a show at our site at 8 o'clock at night.
Right, and potentially be home that night if you prefer that. Yeah, absolutely.
So I see the one-off concerts, one or two. I see there's room for. We have a smaller. It's not ours. We're the host for it. We're the landlord per se for a bluegrass festival that's been established for years and came to us and grew the first year. And of course, the second year we hit COVID. So we have a bluegrass festival. I could see some more smaller type events like that possibly. I don't think we'll run them, but we'd be available. But we have been approached for, I mean, everything. We, very close with Aaron and Melanie Hamilton. They're First Nations next door to us, and they've thought of putting on a gathering of nations there. I've had religious revivals. I've had Ritchie Brothers auction. I mean, we have a large event that is multi-purpose that could do, we could do things for 500 people or for 20,000 people. So we actually do weddings on site now, and that's evolving. So there's smaller things that can kind of keep us more busy. Where we're really going is we've always been zoned for 50 cabins and 300 park models or RV sites up the hill, and that's what we're actively working on now. So we're building a campground up the hill that'll be an RV resort up the hill. So it can be camping, RVs, full services. There'll be music every weekend at a small stage, hiking, biking, lots of activities for kids. So that's where we're really going to now. And then, like I say, the festival's down below. Really like the two we've got. There could be the opportunity for maybe one more of a large size, but I think the better opportunity is for 1, 2, or 3 of the one nights. I mean, Jim, you've mentioned, you've had some packages go through, and if the weekend lined up, ZZ Top's going through with, who were they
Cheap
with?
Trick.
I remember boom, done.
Yep. Absolutely. It's a little early in the season. We also talked about Mellencamp, but unfortunately that ended up on the West Coast in November. But that's the type of artist that would be perfect for your site for a one-off.
Absolutely. And we could do them for, 3,000 to 15,000. So it's just a matter of, and we're kind of a May 15 to September 15, but, we don't need to run 10 shows. If we get one, that's wonderful. If we got 2 or 3, that's wonderful.
Greg, I commend you and your family. The business is better because of people like yourself who come from outside it in many cases and take their entrepreneurial spirit and make a run for it and go after it, especially in the way you have with such fidelity for excellence in terms of execution and site development and talent procurement. Thanks for taking the time today, man. It was good to get some insight into your process. Well,
thank you. All of this has been possible because of a wonderful family and a very supportive wife of 40 years this year, and my boys and my immediate family, and on top of that, a whole bunch of wonderful friends and people in this community, and also Jim, guys like you and the Kenny Hesses and everyone I've met in this industry, very supportive. We've all worked together, and you know what? It's all for a common cause. We love the entertainment. And here's love putting these events together. So thank you.
And in true agent fashion, I will be calling you back and trying to sell you some more acts later on today. How about that?
Sounds perfect. I look forward to chatting with you.
Deal. Thanks, Greg.
Take care, Jim.